let's talk a little bit about security and transportation just a little bit. That's going to be one of the very important things that we need to look at as part of our planning process. If we have a large-scale public emergency or pandemic of any kind here, we're going to have quite a number of casualties associated with that. We're going to have people starting to get very scared and nervous and panicking if it gets to be a large scale, as Andy just talked about, going to covering the whole state. I think the decision to deploy the countermeasures here in the state is going to be kind of a newsworthy thing. Would y'all not agree? It's going to get a lot of news coverage. We're going to have to really coordinate and pull in our resources with law enforcement. And I want to talk a little bit about today on some of the things that the law enforcement that you need to consider when you're discussing law enforcement or discussing it with them. All right. How's the pandemic going to affect your organization? This organization, EMA. How's it going to affect it? How many people in your organization do you think is going to actually get infected and not be able to participate in what you've planned to do? What about your continuity of operations plans? Do you incorporate the fact that you're going to have lost resources, lost people that you can't count on because several things. They're either going to be sick, they're going to be taking care of somebody sick that's close to them, or they could possibly be afraid enough to where they're just not going to show up at all. So those are some of the things you need to think about. What other organizations out there are counting on the same resources that you're counting on? Or have you kind of put that into the thought process of your planning? Have you developed security plans that are scalable? In other words, it may start out small. It may be just a few people show up at your pods and stuff, and all of a sudden, but then the word gets out, and you got a large number of people. You're starting to get panicking people. Have you got those plans to where they're scalable so you can adjust as the situation adjusts? Just some things to think about. Here's some of the security needs that you need to be looking at whenever you're making your plans. These are the things that you need to protect. Your medical countermeasures and any of the other medical assets that you have, all the various locations that you have put in your response plan. You've got to protect the people that are the people that are in the response, your receiving, distribution, and your pod sites. These are the three things that you need to be looking at to make sure that you're including in your plan. And I know I'm talking to the choir on a lot of this because y'all have already done a lot of these. You already put a lot of this into play already. But I'm just going to try to talk about some things that are to kind of jog your memory and maybe give you something that you hadn't thought about. What's the security mission? Basically, is going to be physical security. In the physical security, we're looking at securing all the entry points and all the pod sites. We're looking at securing RDSs, regional distribution sites, local distribution sites. You've got to have individual security plans for each of those. Got to have, in that physical security, you need to talk about the distribution. You need to look at the distribution, your plans, your trucks and all that are carrying these assets. Personal protection. You're not only going to, you also need to consider the protection of your staff as well as the citizens that are showing up at the pod sites. You're actually protecting them as well. Law enforcement, they need to be looking at controlling the traffic flow in and out of the pods, traffic flow in and out of your RDSs and your local distribution sites. And they need to coordinate the parking at these places. Need to look at how they're going to apprehend intruders. How are they going to take care of the injured, the people that are causing problems at your sites. These are the things that you need to look at. It's the point I was supposed to make here. Hang on. Okay. When you're considering your plans, do you consider incorporating the local treatment centers, your hospitals, your clinics? Have you thought about how it's going to affect them as well? Because what we do, and I may be getting ahead of myself here, but I remembered this. What we do is we talk about the people, get the communications out that if you're ill, where do we go? We go to the hospitals and clinics. You're going to also get people that are going there just because they heard the word and not understanding going to the pod sites. So you've got to coordinate. Most of your hospital and treatment centers do not have a large number of security forces there or security there. They only have just a minimal requirement. So get with them and communicate your security plans with them and work with them as well. All right. How many in here are security subject matter experts besides you? Hush. And you. So, what does that tell us here? Do we need to get somebody to help in that matter? I think we need to make sure that we really coordinate with our law enforcement partners, because I'm not a security expert. Tamiki just asked me to give this presentation, and I agreed. Not sure why. They're the ones that's going to give you the expertise of what to do, how to do it, and you're going to need to get them to really help in coordinating how you're going to do your security plans. Now, who are the people we can pull in from law enforcement, or we'll have security experts? If this works, yes. Everybody knows the police, the county sheriffs, the state. Let's look at some other areas that you could actually pull to enhance and help with your security. Private security agencies, court security, or some additional things. Closed pod security. If they're open, if they're closed, if they're done, you can pull them and get them to help. School resource officers. You can get them involved. University and college security, probate services, volunteer security services. A lot of those you can come in and help with that plan, and to be able to use additional resources that you can pull in when it becomes limited, whenever you have limited resources, because a lot of your cities and municipal counties, they're reducing forces because they ain't got the money to have all the police officers and law enforcement that they want to have. You're going to have some coordination challenges with your plan. Lack of, like I just said, the lack of adequate manpower from a city or a county. Some of the local jurisdictions, some of the resources, if you're going to pull from other jurisdictions to help, some of those, some of the laws or policies that are in place, you may have to look at those to make sure that they can help you. You may have to dig into it with your councilman and the councilman and the commissioners in your counties to make sure that they can make policies so that they can move back and forth across jurisdictions. You got to get your local official buy-in, your elected official buy-ins. You're not talking to them. If they don't want to give up those resources, then you may have a hard time. I have not heard a lot of issues with that in here with this group, because most everybody knows their local area, so they are very coordinated. I mean, they are friendly with everybody, and they know everybody. You're going to help everybody. But I'm just saying, these are just some of the things that are tough that in research I was finding the issues with that. I would highly recommend appointing a security lead or a coordinator for your specific locations of each one. Now, I wouldn't appoint a security, or I would like to recommend using a law enforcement in this particular coordinator, because you're going to get buy-in from him if he's doing it. You're going to get he's going to actually be aware of the challenges that he's going to have. They're going to be very knowledgeable of all the security tasks that they need to do, that need to put in place. Some of the things that we need to communicate with him so that he can pass it on is the importance of the medical countermeasures, dispensing, and distribution response. He needs to understand that very well. You need to include him. See if this is this right here. The other thing that you need to do is have a backup. Always have two. Always have a primary and a backup. Because if you run it, are we going to run 24-hour operations with pods? Yeah, maybe. So are we going to run 24-hour operations with RDSs? Maybe. So you're going to have backup. So that one person can't do that, be there and coordinate all of the security measures, from the local distribution sites to the pods to the transportation back and forth. You're going to have somebody else to help with that. All right. Each of your locations need to have a specific site security plan. We can't take a security plan for this facility and move it and say, okay, we'll use it at this facility. It needs to be site specific. CDC, and I've got a lot of this information. How many of you are familiar with the, hang on, never can get this right. Familiar with the Receiving, Distribution, and Dispensing Strategic National Stockpile Assets, a Guide for Preparedness, version 11. Nobody's familiar with that? Okay. I would highly recommend looking at that. Chapter 11, Chapter 11 talks about the security of this, and they're talking about you need to do a risk management process for each site. That looks at your threat assessment. Get your security lead to do their threat assessment. That includes a vulnerability assessment and the risk analysis. Can we 100% secure each facility? No. Are we going to have the resources to 100% secure each facility? No. Are we going to be able to identify which risks are acceptable at each facility? We're going to have to. Which risk will be acceptable? Because we're not going to be able to cover everything. All right. Some of the things you need to ask yourself. What assets or process am I protecting? People and medical countermeasures. What potential harm or threat could occur at this site? Who or what could be harmed and to what degree? Do my existing security measures help mitigate this risk? If not, what measures should I plan to incorporate to reduce the risk, and where will I accept risk in this plan? Those are the things that you need to look at. You need to work with your security partners to determine which sites, areas, and assets need protection. You need to coordinate with law enforcement and security professionals to identify the potential threats against critical sites. When you're looking at locating your sites, also kind of look at what the potential additional threats are, what the terrorist threats are around you. Are you close to railways, petroleum pipelines, facilities that store hazardous material? Because if somebody attacks that area or there's an incident there, it's going to shut your pod down and it's going to slow your process. All right. Thanks to the U.S. Marshals, they're going to get it to us from CDC and to the state. Aaliyah has agreed to get the assets from a state RSS to your distribution site. Once it gets there, it's signed over to you, it becomes your security responsibility. You've got to work with your local law enforcement to have it escorted to your pods, your other counties, and your pod sites. So that's the responsibility there. If we have a large-scale incident, do we think there's going to be a lot of congestion around some of these areas? A lot of traffic, a lot of movement? Do we have other alternate routes for transporting this from one site to the other? Do we have in our plans to where we can actually stop traffic to move resources from point A to point B? Those are some of the things you need to look at, and that's where your security, that's where your law enforcement will work all of that stuff in there. That's why they're the experts. That's why they're the ones that we count on to make sure that we get our resources from point A to point B in a secure manner. Some of the other things that need to be considered in your plan, in your security plan. Now, I'm referring to security plans. How are you going to identify people in your facility? Are you going to give badges to them? There's 3 different ways of giving. In the version 11, there's 3 different ways they talk about doing it. How are you going to identify people? I know most of us know that Jimmy Jack Joe Bob's always been around for the last 100 years. I know him. Everybody in the county knows him, so let him in. Well, still needs a badge. Still needs a badge. What are your rules of engagement for your law enforcement? How are they going to, let's see, let me look at this real quick. How are they going to, what are their, okay, rules, the rules, how are they going to do rules of engagement for use of force? Are they going to, if you have somebody that's at your pod, and they're not cooperating, they're getting irate, you got people trying to push in, get ahead of lines, causing disruption, how are you going to engage in rules of engagement for use of force? They're the ones that can help you decide on how that comes into play. They're the ones that actually are going to make those decisions. What are the policies and procedures for enforcing quarantines? If we have a pandemic, we're probably going to have a quarantine, possibly. That's one of the ways that we can keep it from spreading as much. All right. How many of you have continuity of operations plans? Have you put in that plan that you could possibly, if you could have at least a 40% reduction of manpower, and how you're going to operate with that loss of manpower? I hope so, because I mean, a lot of people, when they do continuity of operations, all they're thinking about is moving from one location to the next. But we need these are the things that you need to be thinking about. All right. Security plan should include access control procedures for entering and exiting not just the site, but around the site as well. Needs to require all personnel entering and exit the facility through a single entrance. Posting guards or law enforcement officers at each entrance to the facility, making sure they're checking their ID badges, establishing multiple routes for vehicle entry, establish a perimeter of 300 to 1,000 feet around each of the facilities. Why do we want a perimeter around it? We need a little bit of a safe zone there, some time to react. Maintaining it well lit, because if you can't see what's coming at you, it's not a good thing. Safeguarding delivery and distribution trucks needs to be in that plan. In other words, the escorts that you're going to have whenever you deliver your goods. Crowd control procedures need to be established. This is, what about at the pod site, though? Do we need crowd control procedures at the pod site? Yeah, that needs to be in place too. And a lot of these are a lot of the same things that you do for RDSs you're going to do for pod sites. Same thing, nothing a whole lot different. But one of the things I would like to say is you need a specific site security operations plan for each pod facility. All right. All right, that's what we did. I did a little quick review of each of those. One of the things I wanted to show you, there's two resources that I would highly recommend that you look up. And that's the Guide for Preparedness from the CDC. And the second one is Role of Law Enforcement in Public Health Emergencies. That is, let me show you this document. You should have access to the Summit site or the ADPH, and there should be a copy of that you can download. But what this takes right here and really gives you a lot more information in regards to the role of law enforcement in a public health emergency. This right here, if you use that to talk with your law enforcement, whenever you get them involved and get them started on these security plans, This will help them get engaged in what you do. It will help them get you engaged a lot more. So I have the handout is we have a security planning guidelines in your handout. That's just kind of a quick summary of everything and some things that you need to do to put in your plans. So that's been included in the handout as well.